This is the EnT podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Dr. Doug Reed, and I am located on Abagway, the traditional and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people.
My name is Matthew Stranick, and I'm in Kamloops, British Columbia, on the traditional lands of Tk'emlúp-te-Secwépemc within Secwépemc-Ulu, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwépemc people. Hello. It's Dr. Matt Stranick with you here. Joined with me as ever is Dr. Doug Reed, and this is the EnT podcast. I believe it's episode 20. I could be corrected, but that'll be my operating assumption unless anyone tells me otherwise. So how's it going today, man?
Not bad. We got a bit of snow here, so if there's any hesitations in audio or video, I'm going to blame Mother Nature. But other than that, it's great.
Yeah, well, a bit of snow. You used the word snowstorm just a few moments ago. It's going to be fine. It's all going to be fine, is what I think. And you got a pretty, I was going to say it's a radical topic, but it's like, for me, it's like I'm kind of maybe a bit predisposed to it. Why don't you just tell me what we're on about here, bud, and why you chose this topic?
Okay, the COI framework, communities of inquiry. We have mentioned that at least a half dozen times in our previous 19 episodes. I'm hoping we're on 20 as well. So
yeah.
And I wanted to dig in. I want to know. I want us to have a similar level of understanding of what the definitions and terms mean, and I really want to look at the framework, because part of what I want to do, because we're maturing, we've learned so much stuff. I'm growing older. I'm not growing up, so I'm not maturing that way. But I want to try some different things with the topics of the podcast, and we've had those conversations. So I really want to dig into this one more, but I want to talk about the framework first. And I know that somebody that knows a lot about it is you. So I want to pick your brain a bunch.
Well, okay, so fair enough. So I guess, first of all, yeah, man, thanks for that. I appreciate, that we are kind of, we've got, 20 episodes or whatnot behind us at this point. And, this just seems like a natural thing for within the scope of the show, in as much as, the community of inquiry framework is one of the more, I think, well-known conceptual models for teaching and learning in, blended and online formats. And man, it's cool to be able to kind of have this as a reason to go back on it a bit. For those who may not know, because honestly, why would you? I actually, the community of inquiry model was like kind of a major piece of my doctorate at University of Calgary these past 5-6 years ago. And part of that, aspect that I was, investigating vis-a-vis, the so-called MOOC courses was social presence, an element, among others, within the COI model. So when Doug brought this up, I'm like, okay, so just kind of this is actually the first, I think, of a 3 or 4-parter.
4 parts is the plan.
Yeah. So again, I think what Doug's intentions are with this is sort of to have this episode is just kind of a, general overview. And then there's sort of, if you've ever heard about the COI model whatsoever, then probably what you would be aware of is the 3, presences, which are constituent of that, in the most elegant of Venn diagrams I've encountered. 3 overlapping circles, with each of them sort of attributed to a different presence, social presence, teaching presence, and cognitive presence, with the area of overlap sort of referring to the educational experience as such. So where I think we can go with this show and into some of these other shows will include just kind of, diving in a bit on what the specifics of it are like in terms of, how it's been measured, how it's been promulgated, because there's actually quite a lot of stuff out there. Again, one of the more well-known of these. But I digress. I mean, I haven't looked at it deeply or, meaningfully really since I successfully defended the doctorate 5.5 years ago. So to me, this is just a really cool opportunity to kind of go back to some of that and see where it may exist now. So thank you for the opportunity there, dude.
Oh, no worries. And on another side,
yep,
I wanted to ask you about the Venn diagram part, because did you love Venn diagrams like forever, or just since you started doing your doctorate? Is that why you like this model?
Well, okay, so this, I swear this won't turn into a tangent. It's more like, for me, since before I became a teacher, even, I've been attracted to the most direct means of communication. So whether that's, in terms of writing, I tend to value conciseness and clarity in writing. I've taught technical writing, for a pretty good amount of years in my career thus far. And what I really also value is the impact of a visual, a well-presented visual. And to me, the CO, it's like I do kind of make a joke out of it. Like, I love a Venn diagram, but I mean, truthfully, if you're sort of presenting something to a group of people who may be from a wide range of backgrounds or, may have different approaches or interests, if you could sort of summarize what your whole thing is about in a visual, then I think you're doing quite well. And further to that, I would say the Venn diagram in and of itself, to say nothing of the COI Venn diagrams, I'll use plural because there's a few different representations of the model. Yeah, it's so, the ability for it to be almost self-evident upon first glance is really part of the appeal for me there, dude, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right on. It's a lot of what you just said ties into what I remember doing my PhD. And it was when my supervisor said, stop adding words, draw me a picture to describe it. And it was the same thing. It was make it a simple picture. And Venn diagrams are pretty darn simple, right? They get right to the point. So
yeah, and I mean, there's a certain elegance to them too, right? I mean, again, I could sort of extemporize further, in terms of how and why it kind of clicks with me on a personal level, but I don't know that there's going to be any great value to that. I guess,
No, I have another Venn diagram question then, or Venn diagram question.
You just said Zen diagram, man.
I did.
That's hilarious. That's like.
And I know you're not going to edit it out.
No, well, I wouldn't call it a Freudian slip, but I'll just say, man, I don't know. We got to maybe tag that for further, re-investigation. I think Zen diagram. Anyways, yeah.
I bet we could come up with some Zen diagrams.
Well, I am using Zen Antiqua font on all of the stuff on the slides for the most part, and also through the WordPress, because that is in fact a key aspect of the 506 Consulting Limited, established 2022 brand. So nothing like a good font to really nail you in, man, to make you mission specific.
Oh, it does. It does. The graphic designer, the limited amount of training in graphic design I have, the font is so important. It can bring you right into something, or it can knock you out.
I have aspirations. I have aspirations of, like, when I grow older, of like really being a font snob, like knowing enough about it really to be, like somebody who collects, really nice ballpoint pens or typewriters or something, like esoteric but classy.
The only
dude, I'm
problem,
dragging us away here.
no, you're not. You're not. The only problem with becoming a font snob or a font elitist or whatever is when you go to a movie and there's a movie that's set in the 50s or 70s or the 30s and they use the wrong font on something. And you're like, that's not right. That font that font didn't get invented until 2005.
Well, I mean, that's part of the enjoyment of being a fan, right? Like, I mean, I know my record collecting thing is like kind of ridiculous given the fact that I'm unemployed and everything else. But I mean, I'm just like, it's when there's a source of endless fascination. I mean, I'm just like, I can think of 5 things in my life that I like as much as records, and 2 of them are my kids. So it's like, it's so fonts. I mean, sure, it's like you're opening yourself up to being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up to maybe my interpret. It's like the hard won, achievements of super fandom. You ask me any esoteric thing about the Replacements, the band from the 80s, who are the best band ever. I mean, my level of knowledge, from when I was 15 about that is ridiculous. And I know people are, to go back to our previous episode, about play and education, people are like that about their sports teams, whatever else. So again, man, I appreciate the opportunity to go into the weeds here a bit.
We're going to come back to the diagrams in another episode. I promise.
We are. We may even have a full-on episode just about, maybe, about, just about visuals, right? Like,
yes.
I actually, I had the opportunity to, in my, at one point for a few years, actually, to teach an instructional design course at the graduate level, education for University of New Brunswick, Education 6228, Designing Instructional Materials. And it was fun, man. Like, I mean, it was like in terms of just, taking some of the sort of ISD or whatever theories, like Gestalt, the notion of sort of the German, completion of the image vis-a-vis its separate constituent parts and things like that. I mean, that was stuff I had no real awareness of. But then, seeing actually, teachers who were out practicing and, doing this master's program or whatever, kind of coming in with their own self-made representations of some of this stuff for their own work situations and stuff. I mean, it was all this. I always got such a kick out of it because it benefited me just to see this whole prism of experience that I was not hitherto, aware of. And that happened for me at a really kind of early stage of my career, honestly. I mean, I was in my 30s when I was doing that. Anyway, it was a time, it was a place. So community, man, community. I don't think, so we're going to go into it here. When I'm sort of conceptualizing what I would want to say to this episode is, it's all about community. It's always been about community. Anything I think that, you and I have said in support of education is that it is a social endeavor, a, constructionist and or constructivist endeavor. The building of living knowledge through, interaction, well-designed, well-facilitated interaction is, one of the best things you can possibly do, right? So I think this really kind of, it's a nice way to roll into this now that we've kind of got a bunch of episodes behind us. So I'm just going to,
and I agree with everything you said, and I'm glad you added the word best in there, because you can certainly sit out in the woods or sit in a basement and learn all by yourself. But is that the best way to learn? So there are some people that are self-taught, they've never learned from anybody else, and they just do it themselves. But we're looking at best, because I don't think we can take a couple of million people and just let them wander around as children and learn the stuff they need to learn.
Well, no, exactly. And, I just, to me, it's just like, what's the ideal situation here? And I think people, just maybe it's easy to take for granted how special it is when people can actually convene in a setting together and have that lived experience together. There's a phenomenological, there's an existential kind of thing, level of the experience there that's hard to quantify or even describe, except to say that something like 80% of communication is non-verbal. It's like, so affordances and constraints, right? And I think some of the innovations in online learning of late have really, been to the better in terms of personalizing things, or at least giving people the opportunity to personalize. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
just jump into your notes here, man.
Like those comments we just made.
Yeah,
It's if we had a spoiler alert tag, that's a spoiler alert for what we believe. If you haven't listened to the other 19 episodes, it's come out and all of that. And the first article that I presented was Garrison and Arbaugh, the 2007,
yep.
researching the community of inquiry framework, review issues, and future directions. They've done the exact same thing. They jumped right into John Dewey and they hooked their star to him because
Well, so again, for people who may be out of the educationalist perspective, John Dewey, like early 20th century educator, who known as being a pragmatist within the field of education. So he's sort of the person who is given a lot of credit, for kicking things off in terms of the whole experiential, approach to learning, doing things rather than sort of being, just stationary in your, cubicle or your little desk or whatever. So any of these sort of, refinements or advancements of more in participatory, active learning and stuff, I think, Garrison and Arbaugh are rightfully giving credit back to a previous generation for kicking that off. And the last thing I'll say before I let you finish off, dude, is that I did have the opportunity to work with Garrison. It was like basically the year that I entered the doctorate was like his second last year of like actually doing seminars, and it was like a very small seminar room, like on the just in this very there was like 10 of us in there within the cohort. And he mentioned more than once within the 2 weeks that we saw him each day for class that basically he actually said, just, I got everything from Dewey. I'm just reinterpreting it for my thing. So it was cool. Again, for somebody who had never even heard of any of that before, to be kind of hearing that from somebody who's as well regarded as per the COI stuff as Garrison in particular is, along with lots of the people who work with him. So,
oh, for sure, it's like if you're going to build a house, you need a good foundation, and so the community of inquiry is built on the work of Dewey and some other early researchers and philosophers. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah, well, it's nice, when scholarship and educational practice acknowledges, embraces where it's coming from, right? So I think that's dope that you threw it in there, dude.
Yeah. So in the notes,
yeah,
we'll have the Venn diagram, even though we've talked about it.
I'm looking at it right now, boy, and it's as nice as I remember it. It's
yeah, it's so tiny. Like even the other components, not the three big ones, not social, cognitive, and teaching presence, not those three, but the overlap bits, the supporting discourse, the setting climate, the selecting content. It is so well thought out and so grounded.
It just gives you a position to turn, conceptual action into classroom or learning environment actions. it's giving you a stepping point. So, you know, it's like, okay, supporting discourse. I mean, that in itself, you know, suggests a multitude of platforms. It suggests a multitude of strategies, and you don't have to get too many jumps from each of those overlap areas into things that are very specific. And you know, again, some of the cool things about Garrison's work, you know, one of his that I keep going back to a lot, or you know, did for a while, blended learning in higher education, from 2008. It's a book, and he co-authored it with somebody who's awesome, who I can't for the life of me quite remember at the moment, but you know, he actually, you know, he talks about the framework. They talk about the framework. Garrison is co-author, and where they go with it, it literally ends up in a book where at the back of it there's like templates for your blended learning lesson plan. You know, like handouts for, you know, here's how to sort of turn your syllabus into a blended syllabus, a syllabus for a blended learning course. So like, it's just, again, it's sorry to kind of barge in on all that, but it's
no, not at all.
It's just, again, you're quite right to point out those areas of overlap, and I was thinking the same thing just before you mentioned it, because you know, it's not a far jump from there to something specific and a classroom strategy, if you will.
That was with Norm. That was with Norm Vaughn.
Norm Vaughn, thank you. Yes, and I feel bad because Dr. Vaughn was part of my doctorate committee, right? He was one of my he was on my exam. He was one of the people on my committee. I had to. So anyway.
And I knew Norm before he was a doctor. He was teaching a class at U of C, but he was working on his doctorate. So he taught a class that I was in. And then years later, I met him in Greece at a conference after we both had our doctorates. So that's, sorry, anyway.
No, man, it's a small planet. It's a small planet. I did not have much direct interaction with Norm myself, but every time I did, and all of his interactions within his capacity on my committee, I mean, it was just great. I considered, you know, it was really a privilege to be checked in with somebody like that. So yeah,
he always good value in my life.
Totally.
Okay,
so
I got the second one, the second reference. You might recognize this. I don't know if you want to read the title of this one or if I should.
No, man. It's cool that you pulled something from my doctorate, my document. It's like I said. I mean, I have no sense of possession over it, really. It's something that's out there. It was a major stepping point to whatever I'm doing now. I'll be honest, I've had very mixed feelings about what I'm doing now lately. So, you know, it's like, I kind of look back on it, and it's like, I'm glad I did it, but, you know, sometimes it's like, I don't even know if I needed to have done it, you know, to have had, you know, the better work and life balance. But in as much as it's out there and my name is on it, I don't write it off. How about that?
Fair enough.
That's the most ringing endorsement that I'm prepared to give to that. But
you just described science. You just described science.
Okay.
We did this thing. We looked at it. We examined it, and I look back, and I'm analyzing it still, and I'm not sure if it's still. That's science. That's how we grow.
I was in my mid and late 30s when I was doing that. I finished my doctorate when I was 39 years old, and then I just immediately stepped from doing that into 4 years at TRU and 5 years in Kamloops, pretty much directly. So if I separate what have been some very bumpy and questionable times within my, you know, lived experience, if I just sort of bracket that, then what I can say is I'm immensely grateful that I got to do that as early in my career as I did. I'm
Yeah.
immensely grateful that everybody I worked with, was committed to my success the whole time. Major shout out to the U Calgary doctoral and graduate programs generally. I know you did your master's there,
Yeah.
and again, like I have could not wanted a better, more supportive experience within getting that. So conflicted feelings on certain things in life, but if I just
Yeah.
sort of speak to the experience of what it was like doing, that if I go back to that time and I look at the document now, I'm happy with it mostly, except when I flip through a random page and see a typo, and I'm like, one more proof edit, just one more proof edit, please, But
Sorry, that just reminds me of my mom with my master's. I
oh
finished
yes,
my master's, put it in the binding, sent it to her. I was so proud of it. And then
yeah.
she proofread it, and it was like she found all these things wrong. She didn't understand it was done. She thought,
Yeah.
yeah,
Man,
it was,
I took it out after like 2 years at one point. And I just kind of started flipping through it. I'm like, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. It's like I consider myself a good writer. I've taught English. I've done enough of it. I put in thousands of hours of my life into writing, and ergo, I like to think that I'm a little bit good at it. But man, I
yeah,
just think it's just like just bad stress, induced typos. Like I'm just like, get this goddamn thing done,
that's
And
it.
my supervisors, because I had two, they were really good about making sure that I was, I was submitting stuff that was legit. And people on my committee commented this. They were like, they told me, they were just like, "Thank you for making this well written. It was a pleasure to read. This, it's normally, not as easy as this, but
Not, yeah.
I saw those typos and I'm like, it's tainted somehow. I'm like, I can't handle it. So I can't even look at it anymore. But I actually do pick up the references page pretty often. I will flip just back through it and go, oh yes, right, just to kind of take a shortcut to get to something that I'm trying to talk about or write about. But I don't know, man. That's a
And
lot of
that's
stuff
another
about my
topic.
doctorate. What's that?
That's another strategy, though. Like, look
Okay.
what you're doing. You're mining your previous work to give yourself shortcuts in the future. So that's awesome.
Everything that you write serves a purpose. Just some of them multiple, and then others of them maybe it's less direct. That's all. But so, man, that's kind of
Now here's but now I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do mean to put you on the spot.
Sure. Nah, that's
So
good,
like
but
the bit I pulled out was like studying social interactions vis-a-vis social presence in the community of inquiry module has potential to help further our understanding of how learning occurs in MOOCs.
oh yeah.
In the 5.5 years since, has that ruminated in your brain at all? Have you thought about that anymore?
Well, okay. So my opinion about the open course phenomena is such that I just kind of call it all. I just kind of bundle it all in with online learning now, and
Yep.
for me conceptually. So if we're talking about, for me, learning has to be personal. Learning is necessarily deeply personal, and I'd go so far as to say it's one of the most fundamentally personal, primal aspects of who we are and our being, and it's one of the major characteristics that makes us human. So, I mean, I'm always up for something that has the potential to personalize and humanize online learning, or blended, or whatever your approach happens to be, face to face. I just like the way that I manifest that when I'm teaching or whatever, may be appropriate, or others may just be like, it's a frigging caricature what this guy's doing. Get me the frig away from that. And you can't be self-conscious about it. You just have to inhabit that moment to the full extent that you are capable of. You know, I think as long as that's being done with sincerity, then I think, you know, students will hopefully respond to that, you know, in some way. And hopefully if they see the, you know, person at, you know, the teacher or whomever, you know, showing some vulnerability, showing, you know, some authenticity as a person, then that sort of gives them permission to drop their guard and lower, you know, their inhibitions a bit. And, you know, then we're looking at something that becomes maybe a little bit more than just about information and conceptual transfer, technical mastery, and maybe something that has the ability to be a little bit more, again, personal, meaningful, specific to the individual, and therefore because of the emotional and spiritual weight associated with that, it actually, I think, furthers the cognitive function and the educational enterprise as a whole. I may be talking to, like, sometimes people are like, you're a communist, you're a hippie, take your scarf away, hippie, go watch some friggin' soccer, you know, maybe, but.
No, thank you for sharing that, because I know that when things have had time to rattle around in my brain, and it was
it's been marinating for a while. You're right. Yeah.
Okay, and that's why I wanted to share it, because your actual study involved MOOCs.
Yeah.
If we pulled in MOOCs out of that sentence,
yep.
Right, I think that kind of encapsulates all the learning. Right.
Well, you know, it's everybody who's involved in this enterprise, the Starship, or, you know, teaching and learning, you know, I would just say is, like, you know, you're gonna develop your own philosophy at it regardless, because it's impossible not to. And whether you acknowledge it as such or recognize it as such, maybe that's something else. But whatever it is that informs what you're doing when you're in that moment, I mean, that's just kind of the sum total of your experiences. That's the sum total of your education and training. And this is the sum total of your cognitive life up until that moment, right? So,
Yeah.
You know, so this is where I really feel that, you know, going back to some of these frameworks or some of these models, such as can be found in your local Scholarship of Teaching and Learning publication, or your local Teaching and Learning Center. We got to speak to that. We got this whole other piece at the end of this that we got to get you into for the next one, because some of our colleagues have published lately, and we think it's terrific, and we're going to be speaking to that a little bit later too. But
and as another graphic or a counter,
yeah,
you need to go back and listen and have a tally of every time we talk about how great Centers for Teaching and Learning are.
The bumper sticker,
where we are.
The H5P bumper sticker machine is coming. I mean, this is just
cool.
It's not a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. It's just a matter of, you know, when. Gosh, that was a sidetrack to end all sidetracks, dude.
It was not. You were 100% on the question that I asked. So
okay,
thank you.
Okay. So where are we at now, dude? What are we?
We're at. Let's go to the third one. It's Castellanos Reyes 2020, 20 years community of inquiry framework.
Oh, hey, thank you. Can I just jump in with something now?
Yes.
Just before we get into that?
Please do.
Because I've got you know, this Skype monitor here, but then I got my other monitor, and I actually have a few tabs open, and I specifically wanted to just kind of throw some of these in. And now this just kind of seems like a pretty good time, since we're still kind of general about the COI. So, I mean, for me, a good visual is helpful, but also sometimes just like really, you know, specific statistics. So for me, the Google Scholar result counter is helpful, because you can customize that a bit to, you know, certain, you know, periods of time. So I just, you know, one of the measures of impact, if you will, for this. So, you know, community of inquiry, in quotes, in Google Scholar, And I've got 35,400 results coming up in Google Scholar, never mind in the main search engine. Now, if we sort of just do that for 2017, which is when I finished my doctorate successfully, if I just limit that, so more than half of these results, or almost half of them, are from just the past 6 years. So 16,800 results are from 2017 and later, out of the 8,000 that are even available. So that just, to me, suggests that not only is there a persistent interest in this, there's a value there that people keep coming to it. And the fact that, there's almost as many hits, because this model has existed for, 25 years. It's closer to 25 at this point, since it was first sort of promulgated. So we're talking about 25-year history, and half of the hits of Google Scholar are within the past 6 years. To me, that suggests continuing interest and continuing use. So sorry, I wanted to just, for those who are doubting any of this, it's just like, fine, doubt it, but there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it out there. So sorry, dude. Castellano.
No, that's really important, because we see the academia has actually gone in, we've tried some stuff, we've taken a look, and then our thoughts have matured, and we're still developing the idea, which is kind of the whole point.
It's really the COI model, to its credit, has been, and we'll get into this in future episodes, because I won't bog this one down by pointing to specific studies and stuff. But apart from the model, the instrumentation and analysis tools that have been developed in tandem with it over the years have themselves been academically validated. So once you sort of understand what the model's about, which I think is fairly straightforward, but then B, that you actually want to start implementing it in a certain way, then just by navigating your way through to the specific aspect of it that you want to test, or is most valuable for your situation, the chances are that between the COI survey instrument and some of the analysis tools, and as well just some of the discipline-specific literature, it is there to be collected, and it lends itself really well to action research studies, educators who are doing some classroom education, or classroom research of their own, and things like this. Again, it's so deep and broad, but there are so many specific throughputs to it that you can really go from abstract to granular really, really quickly if you know how to approach it. So,
and I have another question then that's off track, though it's my turn to take us off track.
Okay.
Wenger's communities of practice, does that have any overlap with the communities?
I think the COP literature is extremely helpful. I think the community practice stuff, particularly when I was kind of doing more in terms of professional development or faculty development than it kind of was at the end. I think probably, to answer the question best, we should actually just do an episode about communities of practice. What I would just say is communities of practice are less conceptually minded and more a function of individual groups of educators advancing ad hoc, but situationally and contextually appropriate strategies to address common areas of concern. Which the COI stuff, it's pretty tied deeply to online learning, and then blended learning, and I guess something that'll be interesting for me, since we're just talking about it. when I was involved in it 5 or 6 years ago, hybrid and high flex were not quite as in vogue in terms of terminology as much as they are now. And since the pandemic, as we've talked about, there's just been this whole promulgation. I'm using that word a lot, promulgation.
Yeah, that's like the fourth time or third time.
I shared somebody one of our videos. I was like, here, you can click on this if you want to, see a little bit about my thing. And it's like, you guys use a lot of 3-syllable words. So it's just like, here you go. Here's a 4-syllable word, promulgation. Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting the sillies, dude. I'm getting the sillies. I've lost the thread.
Okay, I'm going to take us on another journey.
Please do.
Taylor Tomlinson, the comedian down in the States.
Don't know them.
She's a 29-year-old lady. She's got a couple of Netflix things. And she said, when you date young guys, they call you hot or sexy. But when you date older guys, they call you gorgeous or mesmerizing. She goes, stuff with syllables, stuff that takes 20-year-old guys time to sound out. And it just, the way she delivers it just makes me laugh. And the way you just mentioned syllables again, I just needed to mention it. It was cool.
I went on a date with an anti-vaxxer the other day, and it was nuts. It was like normal, text. You actually seem interesting. And then you're in the restaurant. I'm like, anyway, like 10 minutes in, I'm a rabid anti-vaxxer. So she was the person who was giving me credit or uncredit for the 3-syllable words. So I'm just going to take that as taking that as a sign that we're doing something right, dude. Honestly,
yeah, that's the point.
I will promulgate this further. I swear. Lord, 40 minutes in, folks. 40 minutes in.
We have to figure out how to put a tracker on that too, on this video. It'll be ding, there's one, ding, there's two. anyway, back to
when we go asynchronous for a month.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else we got here? Castano race. Is there anything else you wanted to speak to with that, or?
Yeah, I haven't even talked about it yet, right?
Well, thanks. Good catch.
But basically, when they're talking about how this framework is one of the most extensively used frameworks in online teaching and learning,
it is absolutely true.
That's where we're going. And
I'm just like, use the established thing. Why not? Why not start with the established thing? So yeah, totally.
This reminds me, and then they also talk about research and online learning and the design of online learning experiences. So there's the research component and the practical component that all works together.
Again, it's really quite amazing in as much as, to me, I found it amazing, and not just I studied it for a bunch of years, but the way it really lends itself to whatever purpose you want to put in front of it. It's like, okay, I want to use this model to, do a high level overview or like a meta, lit review or, something to that effect. Or again, you can go really far down with it and go, here's a bunch of teaching strategies that are exactly specific to this within that situation. Or, I want to design, a multi-situational research study with the potential to advance some educational goal or objective, right? It's so multifaceted in that regard. And again, I don't mean to just sound like somebody who just drank all the friggin' Kool-Aid about it, but I mean, again, honestly, it's like if you just like go into Google Scholar and just do increasingly specific searches or into your local institutional library stacks and just do increasingly specific searches, and chances are, I mean, whether it's in the field of nursing, whether it's in the field of, any kind of, I guess maybe not the hard sciences so much, but again, just any kind of field that you tend to be in that involves the need for online, it's just there's going to be papers about it through this stuff. So it's really well represented in the literature. So again, just why wouldn't you want to just hang your hat on something reliable?
Yeah,
in my opinion,
if it works. Yeah, when people build houses, they start at the bottom. And they build up,
and hopefully and hopefully with a sound blueprint, right? And that's what I see I see the COI as being really a blueprint for a lot of potentially cool stuff. So
very cool. I like that concept of the COI as a blueprint.
Yeah, that's how I've always considered it. Since that was just So now we got community from the Bjork. Bjork. Am I saying that right?
Designing a community of inquiry in online courses, right? And that's a 2020 article, so that's pretty new. But it's community is a word used copiously in educational research. And we're talking about the cognitive and emotional connections between physically separated learners. And it's like, welcome to our new reality. We just spent, 2.5 years of COVID pandemic. And right now there's a point in how to implement these strategies, right? And that's hopefully the COI, the more it gets applied, the more it can fill that void, so that students are less impacted negatively, sorry.
Well, just in terms of what you just spoke to. So first of all, I think it's awesome that you threw in, a very recent reference there. And again, I just punched into, it's in one of my tabs here for Google Scholar. Literally, just since 2022, I've got 4,530 community of inquiry results. And that includes citations, but still, that's a large amount. And the very first article that comes up there, it's called "What is the Metaverse? Definitions, Technologies, and the Community of Inquiry" from the Australasian Journal of Educational Technology. So that may be people that right, or have been involved with. Well, I love that title. What is the metaverse? So COI is being used for everything to describe the metaverse. Like, okay.
If it works, use it.
If it works, use it. Heavens to Betsy.
That's why it's out there.
Yeah, it is. It is very much so, and all grounded on research. I mean, it wasn't just none of this went untested at all stages of it. I mean, it was validated and tested. With thousands of students or people have been through COI studies in various contexts, right? So. So now what else we got here? I guess that was kind of it for the citations as such, but you got some good graphics here.
The categories and indicators for the and that was more cheap for me because you have more knowledge here, so I needed an extra cheat sheet to help me.
No, man, that's dope. That's speaking of an effective visual. I think actually I even had a version of that table in my thesis. No, man, because it's just like the categories and then indicators. Once you sort of it lays it all out, and those indicators are effectively one step removed from a teaching strategy. Self-projecting expression emotions, learning climate, risk-free expression, group identity, collaboration. I mean, all you have to think of, what do I teach? Do I teach health science? Do I teach, sociology? Do I teach French language? Whatever. I mean, anybody who's got their subject area, if they're thinking, will hear those, or see those, and I think suddenly just be able to start thinking of specific approaches. And hopefully, if you don't, or if your thinking on that is limited or challenging, that you do have a teaching and learning center or somebody with a resource responsibility to assist, to check in with about this stuff. So again, man, much respect for
this cheat sheet.
Yeah.
It has the great in the cognitive presence part. one of the indicators is sense of puzzlement. And I loved that turn of phrase because a lot of the rest, applying new ideas, connecting ideas, setting curriculum and methods, that's all pretty dry. And I've seen it many, many times, but sense of puzzlement is a new phrase. It is not the phrase that normally gets used for that stuff. And I just loved it because it was unique.
Well, and again, inquiry being, you know, the aspiration here, right? So
yeah,
it's like solving something, figuring it out, questioning, and this is where critical discernment of the likes of you know, Dewey and some of the you know, constructivist writers. Vygotsky, he was somebody that I cited a lot, you know.
For sure.
So these kind of, it's all kind of baked into the conceptual material of the COI model. And, you know, if you want to go back on that stuff and really dig in, you can. But if you want to just sort of, and we will, but similarly, if you want to just sort of have something, you can take it off the shelf and start kind of putting it together, you know, relatively straightforwardly. I mean, I don't know. Have you checked out the actual COI, the community of inquiry.org in the preparation for this at all?
No, didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, it really is. So there's two major significant COI sites. One of them's for Athabasca University because you know, Garrison has spent time there, and lots of significant people. Dr. Marty Cleveland Ennis, one of the major COI writers, major besides Garrison, and she's written stuff with him. So I mean, she's just an amazing educator and writer. Anyway, yeah. So they have one site at Athabasca, but then they have this other site which is updated way more often and has way more stuff on it. The Community of Inquiry, all spelled out, .org. So I'll put that on my links, you know. But it's just, again, like the visuals are there, papers that have been published recently are there. So I mean, again, like if you want to spend, you know, you can go in for as little or as much as you want, and if you want to even like splash around for a bunch of your career, you could, honestly. And you know, I just consider myself really grateful to have found it, because it just, in addition to being something like, you know, here's something from my thesis. Apart from that, it really resonated. It helped me sort of take a lot of, you know, hitherto kind of discrete experiences within my practice and learning, and, you know, kind of gave them a wider context wherein they made sense, you know, about the successful stuff and the stuff that you know, wasn't as successful. So it's pretty good. You know, when you start thinking about this stuff, it's kind of like it puts you in a better spot for critical reflection, as it were, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, dude.
So I wandered away from COI specifically to stuff that I could kind of tie to COI for the last few little things I've shared. And one of them
Seneca
is
here. Yeah.
Seneca's philosophy. Right?
Sorry, dude. For those who just Stoic Roman philosopher of note who advised, you know, the emperor of the day significantly. And I think, was it Seneca or Cicero who was the advisor during Nero's time, like the crazy ass guy, Nero?
I thought it was Cicero, but I could be wrong.
Maybe. Okay, I'm gonna Google this after. I don't know if I'll put it in the notes. You piqued my curiosity here, dude. So just FYI, Roman Stoic philosopher of note. So.
Right. I'm just going to read the little thing. It's the happy life is not to be found in pleasures or possessions, wrote Seneca, who was soon to be stripped of both. It is a life spent in pursuit of virtue, of learning what is the right thing to do, and then doing it, no matter how many people do otherwise. We may live to old age or die young. We may be healthy or sick, rich or poor. There are matters of fortune beyond our control. We control only our own thoughts and actions and how we conduct ourselves and how we treat others. And I saw that how we treat others such an important part of the community of inquiry, right? Because if we're a community, we have to treat others well. We have to conduct ourselves in a way that helps the community. And I just really like the quote because I've been that guy that I figure out what's the right thing to do and I do it, and I have paid for that over and over again, but it's still the right thing to do, and I go back and do it again.
I admire you for having the courage of your convictions, dude. That's a hard one. That's a hard one thing to be able to stand in confidence of what you've done. So I appreciate that you've, anything we can do to kind of throw in some philosophy elements here that because it's just like people have been wrestling with this stuff for millennia, right?
Yeah.
Millennia. So I guess then just kind of tip off from your Seneca quote, I got a couple things here. I pick up this free-air book and just kind of chisel away at it. I'm actually about halfway through it at this point. It doesn't lend itself to blasting through it because it's so thoughtful, so close to poetic language, and so profound that to try and do anything other than read it fully would just, or to read it in a cursory way, it would just be doing a disservice. So but in terms of the community thing, just a couple of quotes that jumped out at me where he's talking, about being in favor of things, what he's for. And he says, in being in favor of something or someone, I am necessarily against someone. Thus, it is necessary to ask, with whom am I? Against what and whom am I? So that's something where, like, I've always just sort of thought of, like, I'm in favor of the things that I like, but I didn't necessarily ever consider very much that actually just, being in favor of something puts you in opposition to things, forces or individuals or simple, processes. I don't know, it just sort of gives me pause to be like, okay, I look back at, my time in my career, and maybe there have been times where I've been kind of coming on to opposition and it's like, maybe I was threatening. maybe I did seem like a threat. Not that I was threatening, but maybe I did seem like a threat, not because I was saying anything negative, but just because of, sticking up for the things that I did. So anyway, that was just kind of interesting. And then something else that I think we kind of got touched at a bit here, another quote from him, technical mastery is just as important for students as the political understanding is for a citizen. It is not possible to separate them. So if we're talking about what the community needs engaged citizenry. Community needs, people to participate in the political process in order for it to work. And if you sort of look at the political and cultural aspects of education, and you say, okay, well, let's sort of emphasize that at the expense of the technical skills, then whether that's literacy or other types of technical skills, then you're doing them as much a disservice as a curriculum that only emphasizes the technical. And the last thing that I pulled from him just from the past day or so is this is exactly what has always interested the dominant classes, the depoliticization of education. It only helps the status quo, if you to make it to remove the politics from it. And so again, this is stuff that maybe it's as obvious as the nose on my face in some ways, but just sort of hearing it and seeing it within the very, again, poetic, thoughtful language of somebody who was living in political exile when he wrote this. To me, it just really resonated with some of the stuff that we're talking about today. So.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So. And now we got some of your charming visuals. You got is that a guy?
I have a little cartoon of a bunch of ice cubes, and it was all about community. It was individually, nothing's going on, hold, and then the person that wants a drink suddenly gets a lot. And it was just how community can make a difference and how each individual is important in the community. So I just put it in because I thought it was charming.
Well, and what's also charming is this little dragon riding on a panda bear back. Can you explain that, dude? That's, I mean, apart from the fact that it's charming AF, you know.
No, it a bunch of stuff that comes back to the community and acting the way you want to act, right? What's more important, asked Big Panda, the journey or the destination? Because people see that, right? And the answer is the company, said Tiny Dragon. It's like when you ask a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's firefighter, nurse, right? It was all these jobs. How many people say happy? I would rather be happy. Like, I don't have a dream job. I don't think of sharing my labor that way as my life's goal. I want to be happy, and I want the people around me to be happy. That's more important to me. So
absolutely,
it was just when I put a bunch of this stuff together, it was just where life was right at that moment, right? And the company is the most important thing, right? Because, like, look at this. I wouldn't be doing this without you, right? I'm sure I could have put it together and kind of done some stuff, but it would have been me as a talking head instead of us having the exposition back and forth.
Well, so I mean, that's I mean, it's the only thing that makes it interesting. It's
that's it, right? Otherwise, it's mansplaining, yeah.
You know, and you got to, I gather, community is the word of the podcast. Is that true?
That's what I think the word of the podcast is, because I didn't have the deeper understanding of community of inquiry. So if you want to change that to something,
no, man, it's dope. I think we've been talking about a lot of stuff today that extends beyond, but still adds to the community of inquiry discussion. If you again assume that you know, education is a social endeavor, and if you can also then assume that there's no such thing as a political free education, politics-free education, and if you can then sort of take, I don't know, I see, you know, like it wasn't difficult for me to gloam, you know, the free air into the COI stuff, and it's just, I feel like as a conceptual model, that's one of the cooler things about it. It doesn't exclude very much. So anyways, that's just kind of, I think it's on point, dude, is what I'm saying, honestly.
Right on.
And then you got a very compelling question here.
The question is like a point to ponder for the listeners. Like, what aspect of community is most important to you regarding your learning, right? So if that's something you want to take away and just think about, or if you want to share with us through social media or whatever, we're happy to come back and touch on that again.
Somebody will actually do that once sometime and be like, whoa, which is gonna be like, we got one. We got a live one.
Yeah, and I'm getting stuff through other, like, I'm getting stuff through other social media, not the EnT stuff, but people are sending me stuff. So
that's fabulous. Okay, and I guess just one more thing, just kind of, I mean, it does seem like we kind of want, you know, I think we've gone pretty good with this as far as a general intro goes. But I guess I just wanted to, since if it's okay to mention this now, Doug,
please do.
I just wanted to mention about Journal on Centers for Teaching and Learning has their latest issue out, their latest online. It's an open publication, and among a few of the articles, Journal. I think I'm conflating the name of an article with the name of the special issue. Okay, the CTL, assessing CTL. There we go. So we got a whole, there's this whole dope issue. There's this whole awesome issue. And then among that, and I'll apologize to, you know, our past colleagues or current colleagues, but yeah, so within the special issue about assessing teaching and learning centers in the Journal of Centers for Teaching and Learning. There's this awesome article by some of our past colleagues. I don't know everybody on this list, but I know a few of them. Use of narratives to communicate value in educational development. I have not read the article yet, but I'm gonna. It looks awesome.
Next
it looks
week.
Awesome.
Next week we'll do that.
So we're gonna do a whole special episode about the issue, I believe, and then maybe we're gonna zoom in on this because just in terms of the authors, Rafael Caroloy's friends of mine. She worked at TRU for a while, worked at University of Calgary for a while. Carolyn Hostler, again, a great TRU person who's worked at a bunch of other places. Claudio Clamitero, who I co-published something with, along with some other writers back when I was doing the Teaching and Learning Center thing in Ontario. Carolyn Ives, just fantastic person, committed, an amazing person and fantastic as in her faculty development role. I can't think of anybody who's probably better at it than she is, honestly, who I've met. So this is just a really solid lineup of really good, earlier and mid-career people on what looks to be a very important topic. So congrats.
And next episode, part of our maturing the podcast is to dive into things like this, and that's the teaser for next time. Like, be sure to check in next week, episode 21. We're going to take a look at all that stuff.
Yeah, we're actually, just going to spend, because it's within the scope of the show where it's like, okay, we want to just check out an entire issue of something. Then we can do that, and we may at some point do that, for instance, with the ERODL, the International Review of Research in Open and Distributed Learning. And this is actually the last tab that I had open, only because I just wanted to check the number of COI papers, right? Because because ERODL is, as Doug, and maybe others, it's published by Athabasca University, right? So one of the first and most important online distance institutions in Canada is publishing one of the most highly indexed, really well-rated peer-reviewed journals about teaching and learning vis-a-vis online and distance. And there's I'll just spoiler alert, there's quite a few COI papers. Like even since 2017, there's 50 of them just in this one journal, right? So anyways, we got all this to look forward to, I think. Do we have anything else we want to finish off here with, bud?
No, I just hope the snowstorm didn't impact my my audio and visual too
No,
much,
actually, it ended up being fine. I didn't really notice it at all. So, okay, well,
that's all
thanks.
I've got.
Yeah, thanks as ever for joining us. Take care. We wish you the best, and until next time.
Yeah, have a good night.